Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to recreate the same lab we did last time, but this time using EVE-NG. EVE-NG is more advanced and realistic because it can run real network operating systems and give us an environment that is much closer to working with real devices. In this lab, we're going to create two VLANs and connect them using a multi-layer switch to enable inter-VLAN routing. By the end of the lab, devices in different VLANs should be able to communicate with each other successfully. So let's get started. Open VMware, power up your machine. I will wait for it to power up. Log in, type root, Eve. And now that we have logged in, open your browser. Open your browser and search for this IP address 192.168.100.13. Now let's start our lab. First, I'm going to start with N devices. Right click, node, type PC. I want 4 of them. And click save. So let's align them. I'm going to add 2 on the right and 2 on the left. Now let's add the switches. Right click, node, type switch. Set the number of nodes to 2 and make sure you click layer 2 switch and click save. I want 1 here and 1 here. And let's add 1 multi-layer switch, type switch, and make sure it's layer 3 and click save. Now let's connect everything. I will click here and then I'll drag it to the other device. You can choose any switch interface for the connection, but I'm going to keep the default interface. So just click save, and let's do that with all the other PCs. Click it and then drag it to the other device and click save. Now let's connect the switch. Now let's assign the IP addresses to the PCs. Right click on the PC and click start. Open it. And I'm going to type IP 192.168.20.20/24 for the subnet mask. /24 means the subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. It tells us that the first 24 bits are used for the network part and the remaining 8 bits are for the hosts. So click enter, and it's checking for duplicated addresses. So it's checking that there's no other PC with the same IP address. And you can see we have assigned the IP address correctly. Now let's move on to the second PC. Right click, start, open it. And I'm going to type IP 192.168.20.21/24 for the subnet mask and press enter. And you can see the IP address. Now let's move on to the second VLAN, VLAN 30. Right click, start, and let's open it. IP 192.168.30.30/24 for the subnet mask and press enter. and let's add the IP address of the last PC. Open it. I'm gonna say IP 192.168.30.31/24 and press enter. And you can see we have assigned the IP address successfully. Now let's start the switch. Right click and click start. Before we start configuring the switch, I want to show you something important. Devices connected to the same switch can communicate with each other without any extra configuration because by default they are all in the same VLAN, which is VLAN 1. Now let's test it. I'm gonna try to ping PC1 from PC2. So let's type ping 192.168.20.20 and press enter. As you can see, the ping is successful. This happens because both devices are in the same VLAN. And since they are in the same VLAN, they don't need routing to communicate with each other. Now let's configure the switch. Let's type enable. First, I want to show you the default VLAN setup. So I'll type show VLAN pre. I'll type show VLAN brief and press enter. As you can see, by default, all the ports are in VLAN 1. So now I'm going to add PC1 to VLAN 20 first. Now I'm going to start the configuration. I'll type config t, and now let's type host name. I'll name it SW20, and I'm going to say no IP domain lookup. So if we wrote something by mistake, it's not going to start looking for a domain. So press enter. Now I'm going to select the interface of PC1 and I'm going to add it in VLAN 20. So I'm going to type interface gigabit Ethernet 00 and press enter. Here I'm selecting gigabit 00 first. Then I set the port to access mode because it will connect to an end device. So I'll type switch port mode access and press enter. An access port carries traffic for a single VLAN and connects end devices to the network. After that, I assign it to VLAN 20 by using switch port access VLAN 20. This means that any device connected to this port will become part of VLAN 20. And you can see it just created VLAN 20, saying creating VLAN 20. If I try to ping right now, the ping is going to fail. That's because PC1 is now part of VLAN 20 and PC2 is still part of VLAN 1. So I'm going to show you that by typing show VLAN brief. And you can see here, let's go up, that in VLAN 20 we have gigabit Ethernet 00, which is PC1. Now let's go to PC2 and try to ping PC1, and the ping is going to fail. Before it was working because they were in the same VLAN, but now it's saying host. That's because we moved PC1 to VLAN 20. Now let's add PC2 to VLAN 20 also, so they can be in the same VLAN. So I'm going to say config t interface gigabit Ethernet 01 gigabit Ethernet 01 and press enter. I'm going to say switch port mode access and switch port access VLAN 20 and press enter. Now let's end this, and I'm going to say show VLAN, and you can see that in VLAN 20 now we have Gigabit Ethernet 00 and Gigabit Ethernet 01, and now they're able to ping each other. Now let's try to ping. This time it's going to work because now both PCs are in the same VLAN. As you can see, we are getting a reply. That's because now both PCs are in the same VLAN, VLAN 20. Amazing. Now let's configure the second switch for VLAN 30. Right click and start. Let's open it. I'm going to wait for the switch to load. Now type enable config t host name SW30 no IP domain lookup. Now I'm going to select the interfaces Gigabit Ethernet 00 and Gigabit Ethernet 01 together at the same time by typing interface range Gigabit Ethernet 00 and also 1. Now let's type enter. Next, I put these ports into access mode by using the command switch port mode access and press enter. After that, I assign them to VLAN 30 by typing switch port access VLAN 30. As you can see here, it's saying that the VLAN 30 does not exist and it just created it. Great. Now let's check that by typing end show VLAN, and you can see in VLAN 30 we have Gigabit Ethernet 00 and Gigabit Ethernet 01. Now we are done configuring both switches. Next, we're going to configure the core, our multi-layer switch. So right click and click start. So I'm going to wait for the switch to load. Type enable config t hosts name S1 no IP domain lookup and press enter. Now I'm going to select Gigabit Ethernet 00 and Gigabit Ethernet 01 by typing interface range Gigabit Ethernet 00 and also 01, so I can configure both ports at the same time. Next, I specify the trunk encapsulation by typing switch port trunk encapsulation using .1q and press enter. Finally, I set the ports to trunk mode by typing switch port mode trunk and press enter. Now let's end this. And next I'm going to create VLAN 20 and VLAN 30 and their interfaces. So type config t and I'm going to type VLAN 20 and VLAN 30. Now let's create the interface. Type interface VLAN 20 and the IP address and the IP address 192.168.20.251 and the subnet mask 255.255.255.0. So at this stage, I'm assigning IP address for each VLAN. For VLAN 20, I configure an interface on the multi-layer switch and assign the IP address 192.168.20.251. This IP address will act as the default gateway for VLAN 20. Now, what does that mean? The default gateway is the exit point for devices inside a VLAN. It's the device that allows communication between different networks or VLANs. So if a device in VLAN 20 wants to communicate with a device in another VLAN, it cannot do it directly. It must send traffic to the default gateway first, which is the multi-layer switch in this case. The switch then handles the routing between VLANs. The same process applies to VLAN 30. Say no shot, so the interface will be up, no shot. And you can see interface VLAN 20 changed state to up. Now let's do the same steps for VLAN 30 by typing interface VLAN 30, the IP address, the IP address 192.168.30.251 and subnet mask 255.255.255.0 and press enter and say no shot, and you can see VLAN 30 changed state to up. Amazing. Now we are done creating the interfaces and assigning the IP addresses. However, we are still missing two important steps. Before we configure them, let's first see why they are necessary. Let's try to ping VLAN 20 from VLAN 30. So I'm gonna go here, open it, and I'm gonna try to ping VLAN 20 by saying ping 192.168.20.20, and it's saying no gateway found. That's because the first thing we need to configure is the default gateway on the end devices. So let's do that. I'm going to open it, and I'm going to say IP 192.168.20.20/24 for the subnet mask, and for the gateway 192.168.20.251, which is the interface that we created in the multi-layer switch for VLAN 20. So press enter, and you can see here we have the IP address, the subnet mask, and the default gateway. So let's move on to the second PC. 192.168.20.21/24, and the default gateway 192.168.20.251, and press enter. As you can see, we assigned the default gateway. Now let's move on to VLAN 30. Let's say IP 192.168.30.30/24 for the subnet mask, and the default gateway 192.168.30.251, and let's press enter, and you can see we have the IP address, the subnet mask, and the default gateway. Now let's move on to the last PC. Open it, and I'm going to say IP 192.168.30.31/24, and the subnet mask 192.168.30.251, and let's press enter, and you can see we have assigned the default gateway successfully. Now we are left with the second step. So the second step, we need to enable IP routing on the multi-layer switch. So let's go to the multi-layer switch, and let's say end this first, fig t, and press enter. Now I'm going to add the IP routing command by typing IP routing and press enter. This allows the switch to operate as a layer 3 device and route traffic between different VLANs. Now let's try to ping again. Let's open PC 3 and try to ping PC 1 by saying ping 192.168.20.20 and press enter. As you can see, we are getting a reply. This means the configuration is working correctly. In this setup, we are using a multi-layer switch as a layer 3 device, and we enabled the IB routing command so the switch can route traffic between VLANs. Right now, we are in VLAN 30 and we are able to bring a PC in VLAN 20. The traffic goes from the PC to the multi-layer switch using the default gateway. The default gateway is important because it tells the PC where to send traffic when the destination is in a different network. Since the default gateway IP address is configured on the multi-layer switch interface, the PC knows where to forward the traffic. After that, the multi-layer switch routes the traffic to the other switch and then goes to the destination device in VLAN 20. This confirms that the Inter-VLAN routing is working correctly. So inshallah, I'll see you in the next video, and thank you for watching.